China in a Backpack, now on BBC One, with Michael Palin.
There it is, the coast of China. The big one, probably the most important and significant of all the countries of the Pacific Rim, and yet the one that's least understood. But we've got to try and understand it, because if forecasts are right, within the next 25 years, China is going to have the most powerful economy in the world. Yet I still have that feeling, probably partly because of its recent history, feeling of apprehension about travelling in China, a vague whiff of difficulty and discomfort. But I'm also deeply fascinated and looking forward to getting there.
Slipping into China through the port of Qingdao is like coming in through the back door. If you've taken the overnight ferry from Korea, as I have, then this is where you will first set foot in a country that is home to 1/4 of the world's population. The first surprise is how big the place is. Qingdao has grown from a seaside resort to a city the size of London in just 20 years. And there are no signs of it stopping there. The second surprise is the welcome guest house, which turns out to be a Bavarian castle. It was built for the governor 90 years ago, when Qingdao was a German colony. The spirit of Wagner lingers in the woodwork, and the Chinese seem to rather like it. Communist leaders were especially keen if the wall plaques are anything to go by. When Mao Zedong wanted to get away to the seaside, this is where he came, and this is the room he stayed in.
Just this, is it? Thank you very much.
Little ante-room for drinking tea and planning revolutions. And through here, another little room, leading to another huge room, the state bathroom. That's wonderful. A mixture of simple socialist taste and German Baroque results in a very small loo. The old colonial town has survived remarkably unscathed, maybe because the party leaders liked it so much. Modern China has been grafted onto Germany without anybody really noticing. As soon as I've unpacked, I take a walk to get my first feel of life on Chinese streets.
That's interesting. Blood donors, organ donors.
The sign doesn't help much, but the sign language tells me that mass massage is on offer.
Yeah. 我学英文。
我明白。不是。
Every single masseur turns out to be blind.
Yeah? Take my coat off. Do you speak any English? Do you speak any English? Not really. Communication isn't really necessary. Does it through the fingers. It's like it's stronger all the time. Pressure's up. a wall collapse on you. Oh, that's nice. That's better. That's better. Oh. Turn me out on the street in a minute.
Public massage is clearly not unusual in China, and I come away converted.
Walking on air. Walking on air. Really, it's a tough massage. A few bones broken, but I feel wonderful.
The Chinese seaside seems just like the British seaside. Lots of people in thick coats, walking around very cold water. There are the same school parties, and the same loonies, health freaks. There are the same keep fit fanatics, and the same sun worshippers. Being photographed seems to be a passion in China, and one that an old ham like myself can hardly resist.
Okay, do one more.
It gives me a sense of belonging, as if I've become an honorary Chinese on my first day here.
That's good. You like this? Is it good?
还可以啊。
Yeah. Very nice.
Back at the guest house, there is only one possible book at bedtime. Quotations from Chairman Mao Zedong. Suitable reading for the man who once slept here. The socialist system will eventually replace the capitalist system. This is an objective law, independent of man's will. However much the reactionaries try to hold back the wheel of history, sooner or later revolution will take place and will inevitably triumph. Dreaming. Among the hills outside the city is something never envisaged in Mao's little red book, a vineyard producing Chinese Chardonnay. It was started 12 years ago by a pioneering Englishman who went bust and died at the age of 43. Michael Parry's grave overlooks slopes where supply can now barely keep pace with demand.
Do the Chinese like wine now?
Oh yes, very much.
Wu Liqiu is the chief winemaker at the Huadong vineyard.
Yes,
It's good.
because of production is getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Michael Parry's unfulfilled dream has been realized as a joint venture project between the Chinese and a British company. Huadong is being modernized, but the labels still go on by hand, and some of the departments remain defiantly labor-intensive. In the end, of course, it's all a matter of taste.
The magic moment.
Let's start from
Wu
Riesling.
Liqiu.
On an afternoon when we certainly didn't need to chill the wines, Wu Liqiu poured me some of his favorites.
Well, it's a nice colour. Yep. Pale and Chinese Riesling. Here we
Yes.
go.
Yeah.
Yep. Kind of
Kind of
Appley?
Yeah, appley. Yeah. Like green apple.
yeah. Well, should we break the ice?
Yes.
Not
Very
smashing.
mouthful.
Not smashing.
Mm.
Nice, isn't it?
Mm.
Well,
So
That's
we
good.
drink Chardonnay.
yeah.
I could do with a few more glasses, but China awaits. There's a lot of the country still to go.
Well, we've come inland now from Qingdao on the coast to Taishan, which is China's most sacred mountain. And it's considered very much to your spiritual advantage to climb it, which is what I, of course, intend to do. Thoughtfully, they put some steps up the mountain, 6,293 of them, so better get started.
The Chinese believe that if you can climb the exalted mountain, you'll live to be 100. Pension fund managers will be pretty impressed by the turnout today.
Good for you though, isn't it? It's a good thing to climb. Once you get to the top, you can, gods will look after you for a few years. So you come again.
The stamina of the pilgrims is impressive. Taishan Mountain is 5,000 feet high, and well before the top we're in amongst unmelted snow.
I've lost count now, but I think it's about 200, about one.
Is this travel or work, some Chinese ask me.
To travel and work, to see the country,
Oh, to see the country.
as much of the country as possible. Yeah. Today Taishan, tomorrow the world. Race you to the top?
The only people who take it in their stride are porters, and they're carrying the heaviest weights. Taishan Mountain has great meaning for all Chinese. The Taoists believe life begins where the sun rises, so this, the most easterly mountain in China, is the most sacred. Even Chairman Mao struggled up here. At last, after 2.5 hours, I reach the southern gate of heaven. Once through the august portals, relief is short-lived. Not only is the temperature in paradise well below zero, but the real heaven is another half-mile away, up another 100 steps. Then there's Immortalization Archway to pass through, and you're there. Time to pay respects and give heartfelt thanks to the greatest deity on the mountain, the princess of the temple of the azure cloud.
Thank you very much. Very nice mountain.
From the sacred mountains of Taishan to the fleshpots of Shanghai is a journey of 550 miles. For a communist country, China's trains have always been conspicuously class-conscious. Now the difference between hard and soft class seems to be widening.
Hello.
Hello.
Taking pictures of all Chinese eating breakfast.
In today's China, wealth, it seems, can be flaunted without risk. As Deng Xiaoping himself said, to be rich is glorious.
It's not rice. Those are rice.
Oh.
I'm invited to share a table with a businessman who honed his skills in Canada and is now one of Shanghai's many new entrepreneurs.
I was here 8 years ago, and it seems to be changing a lot. Do you find it's changed?
Yeah, for the last 10 years, it changed a lot.
Yeah.
But mostly in these major cities, and especially along the coast, like along Hong Kong border, Shenzhen is the city changed the most. For the last 3 years, Shanghai and changed a lot.
Do you find there any problems running a business in China that you wouldn't have elsewhere?
Over here, there are problems. The people are not used to the way we running things. They've been working for the communist kind of way for the last 40 years. But they're learning.
It's 8 years since I was last on a Chinese train, and they certainly have changed. I mean, just on the in-train entertainment system now carries adverts. There was one for liquor, there was one for insurance. The buffet I had for breakfast this morning, I mean, very international, the uniforms, the general standard, the look of the train. It's all much more up-to-date, I suppose one would say. It's almost more Western, and I just remember it used to be a bit livelier, a bit less predictable. I wonder if this is just one face of modern China.
See, more advertising in exactly the right place.
We're sucked into Shanghai by mile after mile of new apartment blocks. They're being built to house all those millions of Chinese who Chairman Mao once exhorted to work the countryside. They're now urged by his successors to seek their fortune in the city. Outside the station, I step into a great stew of cars, crowds, and commerce. Overwhelming but exciting. Next morning, I'm out on the streets because the Chinese authorities won't allow us to conduct interviews with people in their houses. So not everything has changed. The sheer number of bicycles in Shanghai provides a collective security. It's the cyclist who's boss, not the car. But I wonder for how long. I can't quite believe it, but I'm told that right beside these old alleys where Chinese communism was born, there is now a branch of Harvey Nichols. And it's true. London, New York and Paris are all represented here. Even Savile Row has come to Shanghai.
Hello. Quite surprised to find Jeeves and Hawkes here. It's a long way from home. Let's have a look. Ah, there's a sale here. This looks my sort of thing. Can I try this on?
You can try it.
Yeah, thank you. I never get a chance to go to Jeeves and Hawkes in London, so I think I'll go to Jeeves and Hawkes in Shanghai. Thank you. Not quite. I don't think it's quite me. I think it should be a bit longer and a bit wider. I could have it as a dressing gown. Yeah. How much is that? So that's
440.
440. For only 440 quid, you look like a complete prat. Let's have a look at the blazers, I think, because they're not in the sale. How much is it?
More than 750.
750 pounds, yes.
Is it really only 20 years since the whole country wore Chairman Mao jackets?
Better? That's better, isn't it? It's more like, yeah. Lovely. Oh! Sorry, I've just noticed.
Yeah, I see. But you can.
Do you sell by... No, exactly. Just shoot me from up here, please, Nigel. Thank you very much. Do you sell bicycle clips? That's what I really need, some monogram bicycle clips. I've only just noticed.
Alongside luxury tailors, luxury cars are beginning to appear. At this speed of change, I wonder how long Shanghai's bicycle repairmen will be able to survive.
Good. That's fine. Thank you. Is that enough? Oh. Really? You want that? Bargain. Jitty. It's all right, I'm doing it too. Nice to do business with you. Thanks.
Just as you're in danger of thinking you understand China, you come across something like this. Something you really can't imagine happening on Oxford Street or Fifth Avenue. The Chinese love ballroom dancing, and if they can't find a ballroom, they'll do it anywhere. And anyone can join in. You don't have to be Fred Astaire.
All coming back to me now. I gave all this up for rock and roll. Only had 2 lessons.
You don't even need to speak the same language. You just have to be dressed properly.
That's all right, yes, thank you. Thank you. Good morning.
You are all from
Where are-
London or Cambridge or Oxford?
He's from Bristol, Ealing.
London là sao lại?英國嚟啦。
If I want to get to the Bund,
I see.
which direction do I
Yeah,
go?
go eastward, then
Go-
you can get to the Bund.
Go eastward.
Yes.
Where did you learn to speak English?
I'm a St. John's graduate. You see, St. John's is sponsored by the Americans.
Oh,
This
right.
is before the war. This is before the Liberation War.
What did you do during the time we call the Cultural Revolution? What were you doing here in Shanghai?
Oh, I'm very sorry. You see, I'm graduate from St. John's, and that would be very troublesome.
What? Oh, I see, to talk about it.
Yes?
So you would not have been, 20 years ago, you would not have been allowed to talk to me.
Sure.
Ah.
If I
Hello.
talk to you, then I'm something wrong. I must be a rebel.
A what?
Yeah, something will be wrong. that's
okay.
right.
Oh, but now it's different now, is it? Mm-hmm. There's a couple of chaps coming around there in police uniforms,
Yes.
looking a bit uncertain.
They
What
will
do you
interfere,
think?
but nowadays the matter is they can't interfere. You see, we can talk freely. Yeah, yeah.
I get the impression that my new friend is someone I still shouldn't be talking to. I make a quick exit and follow his directions to the banks of the Huangpu River.
Well, this area behind me now is the Bund, which is the old 1920s and 30s financial and economic heart of Shanghai. And even 8 years ago, when I was last here, this was still the center. But in the last 5 years, a truly staggering construction project has now changed all that. And the new face of Shanghai is going to be over here on what was... Thank you. Shouldn't have had the prunes.
What I was trying to say is that this is the new economic zone of Pudong. It's the most awesome evidence of China's open-door policy. Tower blocks, built at the rate of 1 floor every 3 days, will house a stock exchange, banks, property developers, all the heavy artillery of capitalism. It may be capitalism without democracy, but there is surely no going back to the stern certainties of old-style communism. This is the gaudy face of a country that has seen 10% growth every year for the last 10 years, and wants more. Later that night, I catch the midnight express out of Shanghai.
Are they always, always full? I've never seen...
Oh yes, it is. It's always like this.
And people have to book ahead for these?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How many people? Thousands on these trains, I suppose.
Oh yeah. You never see the hot seats. If you see that, oh,
Yeah.
fully
That's
packed.
further down there, but they just sit and they sleep on those hard seats for days. I mean, how long would a train like this take to get from down south to Beijing, say?
Oh, it will take probably 3 days.
Hard class haven't got beds.
Oh yeah.
Right. Well, but we have. Whoops. Ooh.
Our destination is Vietnam, but we're taking an inland route, traveling due west from Shanghai and following the Yangtze River into the heart of China. It's the third longest river in the world, only a fraction shorter than the Amazon and the Nile. Upstream from the city of Yichang, it enters a series of gorges which cut through mountains so steep and impassable that the river is still the only way through. The Yangtze is a dangerous river. Attempts have been made to control its mighty, unpredictable flow. The lock at Gerju is one of them. Before it was built, boats had to battle their way through rapids, whirlpools, and fierce currents.
This massive lock now we're ascending actually raises the water level about 100 feet. And it's here because the Yangtze has already been dammed at this point. But if the Three Gorges project goes through, this massive damming project, which the Chinese government insists will go through by the year 2009, then there'll be many more locks like this for people to navigate as they go up the Yangtze. But this is pretty spectacular.
Once through the lock, we enter Jiling, the first of the three great Yangtze gorges. This was once the most treacherous stretch on the whole river. Massive rocks claimed dozens of ships and thousands of lives. The busy river sweeps by between limestone formations to which the Chinese have given names like Yellow Cat Gorge, Lantern Shadow Gorge, and Ox Liver and Horse Lungs Gorge. Then quite suddenly the landscape changes utterly. From the middle of the Chinese countryside rises the biggest construction site in the world. Over the next 15 years, a gigantic wall, 600 feet high and 1¼ miles long, will rise from these foundations. It will cost $20 billion.
Well, this is currently the most important and probably the most controversial point on the Yangtze River, because you can see the workings for the Three Gorges Dam, which will extend across the other side of the river here, so that everything from here on that we're going to see, the gorges we're going to go through, will in 16 or 17 years' time be totally underwater.
The homes of over 1 million people will disappear beneath a lake 370 miles long. The project promises safe navigation, cheap electricity, and an end to devastating floods. The cost will be the loss of all this. The man-made scenery of the Yangtze is spectacularly grim. Ancient power stations belch fumes. A permanent smell of sulfur hangs in the air. These towns look doomed. Why change anything when in a few years all this will be engulfed? Coal is flung down the mountainside, some of it sliding into barges, the rest settling over the city like a great black shroud. We pass through Witches Gorge and into Sichuan province. There could hardly be a greater contrast with the world we've left behind. the glittering promise of Shanghai and the Three Gorges Dam. This is old China, where machines are few and expensive and human effort plentiful and cheap. Men and women form a conveyor belt to the coal barges. We decide to stop here and look at the town. It's called Wushan, a small, hard-working place of few luxuries. Life on Main Street reflects basic needs, food and warmth for the coming winter. For some reason, Wushan is full of hairdressers. I decide to treat myself.
You do one of those like you're doing to him, and a wash and no haircuts. I think that's okay. All right, how do you do? Thank you. This is a monk's hair wash. Just do the bit in the middle. Thank you. They obviously work in relays here because the one lady lathers the hair very thoroughly, and now this girl here applies the massage, which is very nice. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen next, but I'll leave them to it anyway. I don't think this happens very often in a town like Wushan, judging by the audience. People here don't really see any Westerners at all. We've hardly seen anybody here. The other sad thing is that in 7 years, this high street will be completely dead. It'll be evacuated, and in a couple of years after that, about 10 years from now, it'll be underwater.
Every porter in town has turned out to help us leave. It's a fixed fee. The fewer the porters, the more money they share. So each man fights to carry more. Believe it or not, these are the lucky ones. I try to be helpful, but all I'm doing is depriving someone of a job. Separated from the rest of China by a ring of mountains, Sichuan is home to 100 million people. For many of them, the Yangtze is not only the lifeblood, but the great highway. The hard-worked riverboats sustain a whole range of ancillary services. As departure draws closer, the pace in the kitchen rises from merely manic to hysterical. Chinese takeaway is given a whole new meaning. Those of us not enjoying the benefits of a Chinese throwaway eat in the more sophisticated surroundings of the first-class dining room. We're deep inside China now, and I'm aware, not uncomfortably, that we're the only non-Chinese on the boat.
After 3 days and 2 nights on board ship, we've negotiated. We've negotiated. Shut up! Negotiated our way down the Yangtze Gorges to the town of Chongqing, which is laid out here. It's about 1,500 miles from the mouth of the Yangtze in Shanghai, and here the Yangtze River meanders off for another 2,500 miles up towards the Tibetan border. We, on the other hand, have to now try and head south towards the Vietnamese border and try and get a train across to Hanoi. The last we heard was that there definitely wasn't a train service across the border to Hanoi, and also that there definitely was, so we'll just have to go and see for ourselves. But this might have been the easy bit.
At first sight, Chongqing looks as romantic as all the other cities of the Yangtze. The difference is its size. Chongqing is the biggest city in China. It may soon be the biggest city in the world. 16 million people live in and around this mini Manhattan. It's famous for its fog. In the morning, I set out for a lunch date. Steps climb steeply from the river. 50 years ago, the entire water supply for the city was carried up here by an army of 20,000 porters.
Okay, so if you choose anything, a local speciality.
Waiting for me at the meat market is Miss Liu, a 23-year-old graduate from Chongqing University. She's one of a new generation of Chinese who can barely remember hardline communism and the Cultural Revolution.
So, Miss Liu, the meat that's hanging up here, that is the menu, is it? That's where the food we're going to eat comes from?
Yeah. So what have we got? What's this we're starting with?
I think this is the steamed meat,
Steamed meat.
the pork.
Pork meat, yeah.
Have
Let's
a
try a
try.
bit. Try a bit of steamed pork.
How about it?
I knew it was good actually before I ate it for some reason. We've come from sort of into China through Korea, and we spent some time in Shanghai. Does it worry you that as people get richer, they get more selfish, less community-minded? I mean, when Mao's idea was that China should be built on the peasantry who shared everything.
Yeah.
Now everyone's getting rich, they have their mobile phones. Do you think this is a change for the worse?
I think so to some extent, because I've learned that before the Cultural Revolution in China, people live more closely to each other. They talk to each other very friendly. But nowadays, I don't think so.
Do you have an image of a life in Great Britain? I mean, like London, where I come from.
Someone said they were very preserved.
Reserved, yes.
Reserved.
Reserved is really, that's more true than you think.
Is that
They're
true?
reserved.
And also they are, especially for the men, they are gentleman-like. They have good manner. Yeah, I think if I have the chance, I'll go to Britain to see what's the difference in the real Great Britain and in the Great Britain in my mind.
Yeah, and you be careful of the men. They're not all preserved at all.
Not the local football supporters, but retired people exercising communally in the socialist manner. Red sashes are sported to remind this new generation of their revolutionary heritage. Time to leave Chongqing. The Chinese take their railways seriously. Complete with its own martial music, the 9:30 for Guiyang pulls out dead on time. South of Chongqing now, still running beside the Yangtze. About another half hour or so, still the main artery of China. An hour out of Chongqing, as we part company with the Yangtze for the last time, I asked the driver what he thinks of the Spice Girls. We're travelling south now, away from the cold grey mists of the gorges, into a world of green paddy fields and a rich, reviving subtropical sunshine. The railway slices across a high limestone plateau and into Guizhou province. Its construction a mere 30 years ago was vital in opening up this remote region. But even so, Guizhou remained closed to foreigners until the 1980s. Guizhou is far from big cities and centers of control. These mountains have provided a last refuge for some of the oldest tribes in China. My guide, Xiongwan, or Priscilla as she prefers me to call her, is taking me to a market deep in the mountains. This is where the Miao people live. The Miao form an ethnic minority of some 5 million. They've more in common with the mountain people of Laos, Vietnam and Burma than they do with the Chinese. During the Cultural Revolution, they had to conform. Now they're free to live the way they want, but they remain very poor. Would you buy things from this market? Would you buy food here? Is it
Yeah.
sort of safe? Yeah.
Yes, it's safe.
Yeah, it just looks kind of basic there. Meat laid out on the open tables.
Do you want to try some?
Suddenly lost my... Yeah, I love these. And the women, do they all wear this all the time, this national dress?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they will wear even more beautiful on holiday, on festival days.
Yes. So, but they just come, they're not wearing this just for market day. This is what they normally wear.
Yeah, normally wear.
Right.
These days, the Miao are actively encouraged to celebrate their own culture. The Chinese have set up a minorities ministry to make sure that they do. The Miao love festivals. Their original purpose was the need for the young to find partners. A get-together could lead to a knees-up, which could lead to a get-together, which could lead to a whole new generation of musicians. Driven out of the rich lowland plains by the Chinese, the Miao have had to make a living from a magnificent landscape, but very poor soil. The methods haven't changed much in hundreds of years. Machinery is almost unknown. Their tractors are water buffalo, and their sea drills are women and children. There are no roads. To get to the village, we have to walk through the paddy fields. There are few places in the world as untouched. We're probably the first foreigners they've ever seen.
Hello. 你好.
你们好.你们好.
They speak Chinese or Yao.
Only 苗. 你们懂得到汉话不? Only can understand some Mandarin.
Unlike many others in China, the Miao are open, friendly and curious. I asked Priscilla if we can see in the house.
屋子里头就可以坐一下，可不可以？可以啊。哎 ，yes yes
All
you.
right. You can have a look in.
Welcome.
Thank you.
那就可以看哈。
Let's go in, shall we? There we are, barging in while you're having your lunch. Is this Yeah. Do they have big meal in the middle of the day and then go back to work?
你们是中午这样子吃一顿，吃这么多菜，然后再回去天都工作是不是啊？天都干活。
Yeah.
Yes yes.
Can you ask them if have you ever seen foreigners before? Ever seen people from the West?
你们以前看到过外国人没得？像他这样外国人没得嘎？以前像他这样的外国人在这里 ，no.
What do we look like to them?
Quite different. Quite strange. Quite different.
How? Why? What do we?
With big nose, they say.
Big noses?
Yeah, they say with big nose.
That's just me. Not everybody has noses as big as this.
Two weeks after entering the Yangtze Gorges, we're out of the mountains and rushing across the southwestern plains towards the Vietnam border. Well, almost to the border. It turns out there is no rail connection to Hanoi after all. We must leave our train and carry on by bus. We're set down, hours later, at a grand, strangely deserted frontier.
Well, this is Friendship Gate in Pingxiang, and it marks the end of China and the frontier with Vietnam, which I hope to cross in a moment. I say hope because this is not an orthodox way of leaving China. In fact, in 1979, the Chinese and the Vietnamese went to war, and this whole border was sealed off. They're now opening it again, sort of tentatively, but not many people here. I just hope there's someone to see my passport, help us all across. And sadly, it's goodbye to China and hello, Vietnam.
Steamy Saigon is the destination next week. Full circle at 8 o'clock here on BBC One. You can follow the adventures of Michael Palin as he travels the Pacific Rim with these BBC books and video available now.